with former Chief U.S. Border Patrol and also retired acting ICE Director Ronald Vitiello. Ronald, thank you very much for your time, because I'm hoping you can answer at least some of those questions. You heard the open there. Do I have any of this wrong?
Well, it's good to be with you. No, we're seeing a crisis on our southwest border. Those images in Del Rio, positively sickening. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum that you're on. That's not an acceptable scenario for this country, the most powerful country, the most prosperous country on the planet, and we're being overrun, and the cartels are setting the agenda on the border in Ciudad Acuña and in Del Rio, Texas. And in McAllen as well, where we're seeing reports that agents are finding migrants coming through in storm drains. How do we get this under control, Ronald? Well, the last surge and every surge before the one in 2019 and 20 ended when we closed the loop in the loophole in immigration law. So in 2019 and 2020, the administration implemented the migrant protection protocols, which allowed people to claim asylum in the United States. But instead of being released into the country, they were forced to wait in Mexico to have their immigration hearing. In the 2014 surge under President Obama and Vice President Biden, ICE built family residential centers, detention, if you will, for people to have their immigration hearing, to have their due process, to seek relief under immigration law, but held in custody until they had those hearings. If they prevailed in those hearings and they got relief from an immigration judge, they were welcomed into the country. If not, they were removed. And so you have to put a situation together like in 2019 and 20, like in 2014, where we can close the loop so people can come, they can have their due process, but then they're removed when they don't prevail in immigration court. But how do we do that when the numbers coming in are where they are? I mean, you're talking about 200,000 plus encounters a month. Yeah, so they rescinded the policy of the migrant protection protocols on January 20th. If we went back to that protocol, then the word would go out. Right now, the word is out to bring or send your child to the border. Right now, the word is out that we're going soft on the border and immigration enforcement in the country. If we turn that perception around, then people will get the idea that if they come to the United States and they're not released, many fewer of them will elect to take that journey. It will deter them from trying to make that dangerous trip, to put themselves in that pipeline. Will they be preyed upon by corrupt governments and law enforcement officials, by the cartels and criminal smugglers who will trade on them to make money in this process. The White House is addressing this. We heard from Jen Psaki today, the press secretary. Let's listen to a clip of that. We'll get your comments after.
The Trump administration approach to immigration was inhumane and was immoral. The situation at the border is the result of a broken system.
So, Ronald, I'll let you address the first part of that if you want, but I guess my question is, what is the system? I'm not sure people really know. I don't know that I know. I mean, there's a process for everyone who shows up seeking asylum, but again, I don't know how we sustain this with the numbers where they are. Well, you have to put in place a closing of the loophole. You have to have people in custody or waiting in Mexico to have their immigration hearing. If you do that, you will deter others from taking that dangerous trip. And I will disagree with the idea that we were inhumane in instituting the migrant protection protocol. That was an agreement with Mexico, an unprecedented deployment on their behalf. They put troops at their southern border to help control the Guatemala-Mexico border. They put troops in their country at checkpoints, and they put troops on the northern border to keep these large groups from amassing on our border. And so you have to have control at the border. I believe that the American people are generous. Our hearts go out to the people in the Northern Triangle and places like Haiti, where life at home is difficult, if not worse. Our heart goes out to those folks. But if we don't control our own border, how are we going to be any different? How does this work, Ronald, when people show up and claim asylum? How do we decide who stays and who gets returned, as we're seeing with these Haitians, many of them in Del Rio? Well, it depends on the individual situation. People will get, if they make an asylum claim, that will be adjudicated up front by an asylum officer in the field, and then eventually they'll matriculate into the immigration court system. What's happening now is many of those people are coming in, they're asking for that relief, they're being released into the country. And then many of them, what I know from experience is many of them will never follow up on that asylum claim or their immigration hearing. And so success for them is to come to the border and be released into the country
in many cases, never to be heard from again. And those who want to follow the process, it will take years and years for them to finally get in front of an immigration judge.
Is this up to Congress in the end to finally do something about this, Ronald?
Well, it's a good point. I spent a lot of time in my career as a Border Patrol agent when I led the men and women of the Border Patrol at headquarters. We worked a lot with Congress to ask for the closing of these loopholes, to reform asylum, to increase resources, to give the men and women of the Border Patrol, DHS, and ICE the tools that they need to help control that border. If you control that border, you give them those tools, we could have a lot less chaos than what we're seeing in places like Del Rio today.
Well, it's a great voice to have with us to explain a lot of these questions we have. Ronald Vitiello, I know you've spent a lot of time in the immigration world. We appreciate you stopping by and joining us tonight to answer some of the questions.